So this video is pretty late in the making. I have been away the last couple of weeks, and I normally like to do my wrap-ups at the beginning of the month, but it's like the middle of the month now, so who knows if anyone's gonna care what I read in December, but these are all of the books that I read in December and my opinions on them. So I actually listened to 5 audiobooks in December and I read 3 physical books. So I only read like 8 books, which is kind of mediocre. I want to get to a month where I'm reading a lot, but honestly, so much happened in December. We have the holidays, and then I did end up traveling right after Christmas, and it was just easier for me to listen to books as opposed to read them. I just didn't have the attention span to read as much as I normally do. Normally, I much prefer physical books. But anyway, let's get into it. I always start with the first book that I listened to or read, and it was actually Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Be Useful, like the 10 tools to be useful or something like that. 7 tools to be useful. I think it's that. And I started listening to this in November and I finished it, I think the last night or right at like December 1st, something like that. So really, I should have spoken about it in November because I do not remember too much about this book. It feels like I've listened to it so long ago. I gave it a 3-star or maybe a 2.5, something like that, because I just felt that, yes, I am an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, more so just for his like acting and everything, not really so much his politics, but the book was a lot about his politics, and whether you agree or not with like what he does, what he says, and all the like his policies, it was kind of hard to ignore a lot of that because much of the book was about him in office and how he used these certain tools that he speaks about in the book to, you know, run for governor and everything and persevere. I think you're a little bit crooked, so I'm just gonna fix you a little bit. I mean, I'm the one that's crooked, but whatever. I think the thing that I like about it, which I like about most memoirs, is he read it himself. So obviously you listen to it and you really hear what he is trying to say and convey. So that was good. Some of the tools, they're pretty, you know, standard, I would say logical, useful tips to use in life, and you can use them for many different parts of your life or business or whatnot. So I thought that was interesting. He tried to use examples of what happened in his life and how he used these certain tools to help him along the way. I mean, he does have quite a fascinating like life. Like, he has done a lot. So I thought it was interesting in that way, but I didn't love it. So yeah, I didn't give it, I usually give memoirs like 4 stars, and I did not for that one. It was somewhat a little bit tedious towards the end, I think. So yeah, I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but I think it's really like a 2.5 from me. Right, the next book that I read was also an Audible book, and I had heard some pretty negative reviews about this book, but I saw it and I was like, okay, fine. And it was Episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. I've never read anything by him, but I thought, you know what, it's like a horror slash, you know, sort of weird book. Let's see what it's like. So I listened to it, and the way that I listen to books, or at least did in December, was I listen to it and I play a game at the same time. It just seemed to work that way. I can't just listen to a book and not do anything. So I like to multitask, and I think that's kind of why I didn't actually sit down and read too many physical books in December, because my mind was kind of like all over the place because I knew I was traveling right after Christmas, and obviously I was thinking about Christmas, and there's just a lot going on. So anyway, back to Episode 13. So this was hard because I listened to the Audible production, and boy, is it like a big production, and I really enjoyed None of This Is True. So I thought that if I listened to another sort of production Audible sort of version of a book, I would enjoy it. However, I did feel like this was really confusing because it's found footage. Like it's based off all of these diary entries or video snippets and things, and it's about this crew. They are a paranormal crew, and they are filming a series, and every episode is a different place, and their main purpose is to try to find proof of the supernatural and things like that. And there are quite a few characters, and I found that to be really confusing as well listening to it, but I eventually realized and who was who about, I don't know, a third of the book in. So at the start, I was really confused. I was like, I don't know if I can listen to this. But basically, there is a couple, they're a married couple. One of them, the man, really believes in ghosts because he has a ghost story from his past, and his wife is really super skeptical. She doesn't really believe in it, but she loves him, and she's really into maths and like logic and theory and things like that. So she agreed with him quite a few years ago, I'll help you try to, you know, record the supernatural and everything like that. And that's basically what the show is. But episode 13, they go to this really like this house that's supposed to be really haunted, really weird things happen, and because it is kind of found footage, it does like jump from different perspectives. There is a ex-policeman or a cop or detective who also works with them, and then there's the cameraman. There's also an actress that she's a paid actress to be on the show with them, but at the same time she's still being herself. I thought that was a little weird as well. So there's like a whole backstory with her, and like, oh my gosh, there's like some craziness that happens in this book. But to be honest with you, this book was not scary at all. It honestly was so silly. I thought it was a comedy. I thought it was, am I supposed to take this seriously? It just got so ridiculous super quickly as well. Like when I actually got into it, I was starting to enjoy it, and I was thinking, hang on a minute, I'm getting the plot, I know what's going on. But by the end, by the last third of the book, it is just absolutely ridiculous. And then the ending, you have like a really ridiculous ending, and then right after that you have another really ridiculous ending. So I did not actually enjoy this book, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 at the end of the day, because I just didn't think it's just not for me, and I found it confusing, and I don't know if I would have enjoyed it more had I actually been physically reading it. I just don't think it's my type of book. So yeah, I just thought there were too many silly scenes, and then it was really I found it really confusing. Maybe it's because I had listened to it on Audible, but I gave that a 2 because I just didn't enjoy it. Okay, and then I read Reckless by Elsie Silver. This I'm reading in a vlog, which I have still yet to finish because I kind of took a little bit of a break. And this is just a romance. It's like a cowboy romance. I have all of the other books in the series, and I didn't enjoy this. I didn't know that what happens in this book happens, and I gave it, I think, a 2. No, I gave it a 2.5. So I think I probably gave it a 2 on Goodreads, or maybe a 3, and then I bumped it down. I don't really know, but I just didn't enjoy it. I don't think I like these type of books where they have multiple characters in the story. I'm also really trying to remember what happens in this story. Basically, there's this woman who is married, and we find out that her husband cheated on her with her sister, but her sister is married to someone else, because it is in a series. I think the first book you learn about the sister first and how she falls in love with somebody else. But the way that it's tied, this is the sister of that girl, and I haven't read that book yet, so I just picked up this one randomly, and I thought I'd start reading it. And yeah, you kind of need to read these books in order, which I have kind of realized. But anyway, it starts off like that. Already I'm like, ew, I don't want to read this. And then she immediately bumps into the love interest at a gas station, and then they have like she's driving in the snow. She doesn't know how to drive in the snow. She's going really slowly, and he's on her bumper, like when they leave. And then she slowly realizes he's like following her, and she's going into the middle of nowhere to her sister's house. And then they end up going to the same house, and he's actually friends with her sister and her new husband or boyfriend or whoever he is. And so, you know, it's supposed to be like a meet cute and things like that, but I didn't find it all that cute. And you have the different perspectives already, so you jump to her mind and then his mind, and it's kind of insta love for him. She is so nasty to him, and there's no reason for him to really like her with how she is as a person. I don't care how good looking you are, if you're rude like she is. And I feel like any respectable man wouldn't care about that woman, but he was like, no, I don't care, I love how you are, yeah, I like you. And she's like, no, you don't like me. He's like, yeah, I do like you. Like that goes on throughout the whole book. Anyway, they meet, they hook up, she ends up getting pregnant. Sorry, spoilers. And then she sends him a text message saying, oh, hey, by the way, I want to reach you. Can I reach you? He's like, oh, just send me the message. What do you want to talk about? Because he's traveling. He is a rodeo. Or like a bull rider. Yes, in the rodeo. Anyway, and she sends him a text message. She says, hey, well, I'm pregnant, by the way. And he's like, oh, great. Thanks for letting me know. And that was his response. And she's like, oh my gosh. And then you go like 18 months later, she's had the baby. She has left her husband. She's living next door to some friends of her sisters or whatever, people that she met that first time. And then he comes back in town and he sees her and he's like, oh my gosh, and he gets injured, and then he moves in next door, and he's looking at her child. He's like, hang on a minute. She looks like the age that she should be. Is she my child? And she's like, are you joking? Of course she's your child. I told you. He's like, what are you talking about? And so basically she ended up texting his manager, and his manager never told him. His manager never told him that he had a child. That in itself is like ridiculous, and I don't really think it's believable. But anyway, that happened, and then it's just like, that's the story. They get together. I just felt like this book was so big for what it is, and I really didn't like the story. Like, if you think of a romance, this doesn't seem romantic to me. It doesn't seem like the type of story that like makes me swoon. Be like, oh, I wish I had that in my life. Like, I feel like what I want from these romance books, or like any sort of romantic story or coupling, I want to pine over that couple or that love. And this is not the type of love that makes me swoon. Maybe it does for certain people, and that's why they're so popular, but I didn't like it. And I have all the other books in this series. I think what is this called? I don't even know what series this is called. This is like, I think it's a cowboy series or whatever. I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea. But anyway, I read that and I gave it 2.5. All right, and then I'm also trying to get through Throne of Glass. So I read a few books. You would have seen in my November wrap up, I started reading some Throne of Glass, and I spoke about those, and I kept reading. So I read Heir of Fire, and then I also read Queen of Shadows in December. These are pretty big books. So I don't know, saying that I only read 8 books, I think it probably, the fact that these are so big probably makes up for it. But yeah, I thought that, okay, this is the fourth book, I'm not entirely sure. There are so many books in this series, but this was the next one that I need to read. This one is when we're introduced to Roman. I hope his name is Roman. It's been so long since I've read this book. Wait, hold on a minute. I think, yeah, his name has to be Roman. Rowan, oh my gosh. So we're introduced to Rowan, who is a fae. And he is really cold to Selena. He's not like all over her. And he basically trains her up and to try to use her powers, because she ends up going to this place where she can actually turn into fae. She's not in the area that she used to be, where magic was removed from the world. Magic actually exists to where she's gone to. So she's gone there. She meets up with Rowan. She learns how to turn into fae and use her skills and whatnot. There's a little bit of conflict at the end of this book, but really this is more like a filler book, and also an introduction to Rowan's character. You're also introduced to the witches as well, and dragons, and I know when I first read this, I thought those chapters were super boring, but then when you get into Queen of Shadows, it kind of makes sense why they're in this book. So that's why I really feel like this was a filler book, and also introduction to some characters. So it wasn't the best book. I think I gave it a 4-star though, because I didn't think it really deserved to be less than a 4-star. I did enjoy it. I tabbed it. I do also jump back to Chad's perspective as well, and also, oh my gosh, I've forgotten everybody's names in here. To the prince, I can't remember his name. Anyway, and then I also read Queen of Shadows, I thought was a little bit better. I also gave it 4 stars. I think technically it's a 4.5 though, but on Goodreads I just gave it 4 stars. It's not a 5-star read, but I did enjoy it more. Things tie in together more. What I didn't like though, and this is generally just with the story, it's not really a negative it's not too much of a negative, but I didn't like what they did with Chad and Selena's character. I really don't like Selena. I think she is so obnoxious. She is so full of herself. I just don't like her too much. And I think Chad humbled her in a way, but the way I feel like Sarah J. Maas did him dirty, like just from memory. Oh my gosh, this was only a month ago and I cannot remember what I read in this book. But basically, they kind of all group together. They end up defeating the king, and now she's going to be queen of Terrasun, Aelin. So she's no longer Selena. She's her true self. She's Aelin. And they're gonna go up to her territory, and I imagine that's what's gonna happen in the next book. Oh, Dorian is the prince, and they also rescued Dorian because he had a demon inside of him that was slowly eating his soul, and they managed to get him out. So he's gonna end up being king of wherever they are. Terrasun. I don't remember any of these places. I know I'm saying this all wrong. But I did enjoy it. I also enjoyed how the witches got into the story a little bit more, because in Air of Fire, they were just, it was all about Selena and Rowan, and then all of a sudden you jump to a chapter on these random witches, and I'm like, why do I care about these witches and these dragons? But in here, you kind of, you figure out what's going on. So I did enjoy this, but again, like, there's so many books in this series, so I don't really know what's going to happen. Is she going to go and fight Dorian? Is he going to suddenly go nasty? Because they defeated the king. Oh no, wait, but there is the other guy. What's the other guy called? Now they have to go and defeat somebody else that's come back from the dead, or he is like a Volg prince or king. He's basically a demon king, and he is inhabiting someone else's body. Whose body is he inhabiting? He's Erewhon, the Dark King, and he is inhabiting, yeah, Periton is some lord that is with the witches, and he's trying to get demons to suck up all the witches' souls or whatever. I don't really know. I read that book. I'm going on too long. I have a vlog on it of me reading them. Obviously, I still need to read the rest of the books of this series. I'm really hoping that I can finish that this month, because I want to push that vlog out, because I started that vlog in November. So it is taking me a really long time. Alright, so next I listened to The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So this one I don't have a physical copy of. I, again, have heard mixed opinions about this book, but I thought, you know what, why not? Let's just listen to it. It's a thriller / mystery. I feel like they might be easier to listen to as opposed to some other books, so I did, and this book was also just so silly. I do think I enjoyed it more than episode 13, but I did end up giving it a 2-star as well. I just thought that it was beyond silly, and also I found it a little bit boring. I did think that it went on a little bit too much. I don't know how long the book really is, but I feel like I listened to it way too long, and then when you finally get to the twist at the end, it's like, it wasn't really that surprising, to be fair. There's like 2 twists, right? There's one where I wasn't thinking that was the case, but I also didn't really care at that point, and I was like, really? So there was that twist, which I think is supposed to be the biggest twist, but I just didn't really care what it was about. And then right at the end of the book, there's another somewhat of a twist, which I kind of already suspected anyway. It kind of made sense. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy it. It's just about this girl, this nurse she's a caretaker. I don't know. I mean, there's like a whole backstory with her and her mother and her father, and she was taking care of her mother, and her mother was in a lot of pain, and she passed away, and she was blamed for it, blah blah blah. So she ended up being positioned with this very famous assumed murderer that is I don't know, in her 80s or something. She's told she can't move, she's in a wheelchair, I think, and she's really famous on town, and there's like a song that they sing about her and everything, because she apparently killed her family when she was young. And so the whole time that the nurse is there, she's not a nurse, but they put her in a nurse's outfit. The whole time she's there, she's trying to know what happened because she's curious, and then she's starting to understand, hey, hang on a minute, what happened to the girl before me, because she disappeared, and you kind of slowly unravel the mystery of what really happened, but then not, and then I don't know, it was stupid. I didn't like it. I know a lot of people like those type of books. I've seen people give it 4 stars, 5 stars. I've seen a lot of people give it low ratings like me too, so I think it's just each to their own if you like those type of stories. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was very good. Okay, next one I listened to is The Burnout by Sophie Kinsella. This one, I didn't have any high hopes for. I used to read Sophie Kinsella so much when I was younger. Probably was too young to read her books at the time, but you know, shopaholics and everything like that, like Confessions of a Shopaholic, and I remember Can You Keep a Secret was my favorite book back when I was a teenager. And then we had Confessions of a Shopaholic, and then that big series, and they turned them into movies and whatnot. So she was really popular back in my day, when I was in my teens, and I really haven't listened or like read any of her books in the last 10 years plus, right? So The Burnout I saw came out in October. It was on Audible, and I was like, okay, fine, let me listen to it. Let's see what she's got. Let's see how her writing is. Am I still going to enjoy it? And this was a pleasant read. This really was. It was so funny in the beginning. I actually was giggling. I was giggling, and most books don't do that to me. None of the books that I've read this year made me laugh as much as this book did. But the problem is this book definitely got very dull, and I do think it was just too long for what it is. Or we got to the romance just far too quickly, because I feel like by the time you get to the romance, there's like half of the book left, and there's really no huge conflict, and there's just this huge backstory about surfing and those other characters in the town, and I just wasn't that invested in all of that. I just thought that the love story was quite sweet, and I thought that it lost a lot of its humor once they basically ended up together. I mean, I don't know, it's about this girl who is burning out at work. She is just losing her mind. She needs a break. So she is told to take time off. She decides to go to the seaside resort. I think it's in Devon, where she used to go as a family with her parents and her sister. And it has a lot of great memories for her, and she hasn't been back since her dad passed away when she was younger. So, you know, it's very sentimental, and she decides, you know, I'm going to go to that fancy hotel that we never could afford to go to. So she goes to the fancy hotel. However, the fancy hotel now is no longer fancy. It's completely run down. Nobody's staying there. It's a ghost town. She's going in February, so it kind of makes sense. But still, it is not fancy at all. It's definitely had better days. And there's some cute little characters at the hotel too. The way they treat her is quite funny. So I did like a lot of that, and a lot of that was quite fun, and there was some really funny moments. Also, the main, like the male love interest, she does actually see him on the train, and he's very rude to this little girl who wants to like touch his surfboard and stuff, and he's like, absolutely not, blah blah blah. And she's like, come on. She gets involved, and you know straight away, well, this is going to be the man that she ends up loving eventually in the book. It's just how the books go, right? But it was actually really well done, that part, and I really did like the 2 characters. I thought they were good. I liked it. I gave it a 3-star though, because it was a little bit tedious towards the end, and it lost that humor that it had at the beginning. Like the first third of the book was really good, or like 2/3, I wouldn't say 2/3, half of the book was really good, very funny moments, and then it just kind of like simmered down. So I gave it a 3. Would have been a 4 if it had kept me laughing as much as it did at the start. Definitely would have been a 4. Thought it was mature, you know, it wasn't some silly love story. It was silly, but you know what I mean. It kind of made a little bit more sense, and the characters were believable, but it lost it unfortunately. So yeah, that one is a 3-star. Okay, so the next one, I don't know if I can really call it a book. It is one of the Audible originals, and it was only 2 hours long. So the book is Still Hung Up on You, and it is by, I'm just looking at it, Liz Maverick. I gave it a 2-star. I thought it was a sweet concept, but it was such a short little book. So basically it's like a second chance romance, and it's all through phone calls. So nothing else in the book. You're just listening to a phone call between two people. They end up like talking on the phone a lot. They were in a relationship when they were teenagers, and then like 10 or 15 years later, she randomly calls him up asking if he has her gray sweatshirt, and he's like, no, what are you talking about? Maybe it's in my family home, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of sweet, but it also hits the mark a little bit. But I just wanted something to listen to. And I think this was right at the end of the month, and I didn't have any books to read, and you know, I went traveling after Christmas, but like I said, so I wanted to listen to something, but I didn't want to start a whole brand new book. So I thought, well, this is 2 hours, let me read that. So I listened to it, gave it 2 stars, thought it was fine, but I couldn't rate it any higher than what it is. It just took me 2 hours to listen to it. Anyway, that's everything that I read in December. Not my best month, I would say. I didn't have any 5 stars. The best book that I read is from Sarah J Maas, and that's like in a whole series of its own. So I think it's harder to rate those books anyway, because they all like following the same story. But yeah, I'm hoping in January I have a better month. I have already read, I think 3 or 4 books so far this month. And I do want to get back to a lot of the books that I basically put to the side and didn't finish in December. I need to finish them this month, or you know, in the next few weeks, and also finish the Throne of Glass series, because it's just going on for ages and I'm getting a little bored. I just want to know what happens and be done with it. I'm not a huge fan of Rowan, though. I do say I don't really care for their romance, so maybe that's why I'm like, whatever. Anyway, that is everything that I read in December. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you all are doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye.